At the height of the civil rights era, a young blue-eyed black man, light enough to be mistaken for white, is thrust into the cultural and emotional cocktail of one of the blackest cities in America, Washington, D.C., known to many as Chocolate City. A young Ray Studevent escapes a troubled home and lands in the embrace of his Aunt Lamell Studevent, a black woman from the Deep South who harbors a deep-seated hatred for whites due to the racism and discrimination she endured. Lamell was able to transcend that and raise an unlikely bundle of joy who came into her life because of life's harsh realities of the times. The background for this story is black culture, food, politics, music, and pride.
Greetings, and thanks for watching this latest edition of Zoomcatchers Behind the Screen Writers Series. We have featured up-and-coming writer Mario Montoya, Jimmy Santiago Baca, the Hell California Crime Anthology Writers Team, and Human Rights Commissioner Antonio Salazar Hobson. Now, we're so pleased to present a conversation with Ray Studevent, author of Pulitzer-Nominated book Black Sheep.
I once read that blue eyes was a mutation gone bad, and they are better equipped to see in the dark. I don't know if that's true, but a bunch of folks with blue eyes seem to have so much darkness inside of them. The first time I looked into a pair of them steel cold blue eyes, I nearly peed in my panties. The Klan had strung up my cousin Jessie from a tree, and 3 hooded Klansmen stared at me. I saw nothing but pure evil. Sometimes the evil in the world makes me question the existence of God, but all I gotta do is raise my tired eyes toward that beautiful blue sky above me or look at a picture of a royal blue ocean. Growing up in Mississippi, when the teacher asked the class how many of us liked the color blue, nearly all of us nappy-headed country girls' hands flew up, including mine. My pencil-thin, ashy arm nearly came right out of my shoulder. When coloring, you had to guard the blue crayon with your life, because it would for sure disappear the minute you turn your back. My favorite gospel song back in the day was Feeling Blue, which was sung by our church choir every Sunday. We even had our own music known as the Mississippi Blues. Back then I was too young to truly know about the blues, but like all of us Southern black folks, I would soon learn the true meaning of the word.
Welcome, Ray Studevent, to the Zoomcatchers virtual studio. I am Kimberly Gunn, Executive Director of Zoomcatchers, and I'm so happy to be here today. We have author Ray Studevent. He is here. He's going to be telling us this story, unpacking this fascinating tale, what I'm calling a unique love story. Author of Black Sheep. Here, and it's a story about a blue-eyed Negro that is speaking of abandonment, belonging, racism, and redemption. So, Ray Studevent, welcome to the Zoomcatchers virtual studio. Bonjour, bienvenue. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Kimberly. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's across the Atlantic Ocean, but thank you so much for having me on.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, and Happy New Year. I think we can still say that. We're early into January and getting on to this book, and let's get this conversation going. Behind the Screen is a show that features cool conversations with cool people, and Ray Studevent, author of Black Sheep, is one of these people. So, Ray, the book was written March 2021, and then you ended the year with a Pulitzer nomination. Congratulations! Not too shabby for the book. So let's have you introduce yourself and tell us more about your story.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's to be nominated for a Pulitzer. It's still all surreal. I set out to write the book as on the front of the book talks about redemption and abandonment. And there was a lot that went into it. But I locked myself in the cabin, poured my heart into it, and the reception and just the reaction of so many people has been just overwhelming and quite amazing, to be honest. So I'm excited. Yeah.
Great. And we are so happy to have you here continuing with our writers series. And I want to, get into your story. We're calling it a unique story, story somewhere between, let's say, the Notebook meets The Help. And what had happened, Ray? What was going on in your young life?
Well, I needed some help, but no, it was the mid 60s. My biological mother, we're in Washington, D.C., height of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King and March on Washington and what have you. And so my father, biological father, was a black man who, at 12 years old, was on the streets. His mother was an alcoholic. So at 12, he was on the streets. And my biological mother, when she was 12, she didn't have a father, just like my biological father. Neither one of them had a father. But she was white, one of the remaining few left in Chocolate City, and in that part of town for sure. But she didn't have a father. And then when her stepfather tried to rape her, then her mother tried to break it up. Then he hit her in the face with a shotgun, knocked all her teeth out, and proceeded to try to rape her. So she fought him off and left. So you had this black man and black boy, white girl on the streets at 12 years old in Washington, D.C., trying to figure it out. And that was in the mid 50s. They get together in the mid 60s. And when interracial marriage and relationships were really illegal for the most part until 1967. But as a result of them coming together, a lot of times when you hear the word orphan, it has a negative connotation to it. But in all fairness, and in Black Sheep, I didn't want to portray them as that. When I was younger, the picture was painted as such, but they were good people, just the victim of circumstances. And one would think, well, if they were victims, why would they leave their own? They had no business, having a child. His mother, my father's mother, was an alcoholic. He became a raging alcoholic at a young age. My mother was a heroin addict. She started drinking, doing heroin and drugs, and caught up in the whole 60s drug scene. They had no business having a child. But you can understand that they both were fighting their demons from their own childhood. You see? So it was a difficult situation, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you were a white, blue-eyed Negro, and you were in the blackest city in America, D.C., also known as Chocolate City. And, at that time when you were growing up, there was so much going on in the country, and there was a lot of political upheaval.
Actually, one of the stories is after Martin Luther King was assassinated in April of '68. I was about 15 months old, and my building was on fire. And I vaguely remember it, but I remember the story that when there was DC riots and they were burning up the city, and it was almost a transition because you had the Black Panther movement, the Civil Rights movement. The '60s were just full of turmoil. And it was the women's movement, drugs. But going towards the 70s, a DC native, Marvin Gaye, 70, 71, right around the same time that James Brown was saying, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," Marvin Gaye had, the song "What's Going On?" And he was saying, brother, 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 because there was just so much uncertainty and Black people had just grown tired of the oppression and what the images they were seeing in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So there I was, an orphan, basically bounced around all around the city. Enter Lamell Studevent and Calvin Studevent as my savior. But at that time, violence, running, it was just, America was a mess. Vietnam was raging. Then you had, the Black exploitation movies and as you're showing there. So there was a movement of trying to find Black pride of some sort. But I remember in the black exploitation movies, you go in and it was about the man, kill Whitey, cracker, and at a young age, we all went to the theater. I lived 2 blocks from the Senator Theater on Minnesota Avenue, and it was packed when there was black exploitation movies. Also in Bruce Lee, for some reason, black folks love Bruce Lee, but but you could sense the anger just by watching the movies. And the Mac, yeah, it was the movie The Mac because it starred a DC native, Max Julian. It was about pimps and black, just everything was going on. It was just absolute mess. There you were being told you're black, but you look in the mirror, you go, well, somebody's lying. Like somebody needs to do some explaining, So,
Somebody needs a new pair of glasses, right?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's what was
So
going on in DC. So
and there you were, in the midst of all that, probably, catching it from all sides. Let's show
mhm.
a picture of your father, picture of him, a full black
Yeah,
man. And then here's a young picture of you in the middle of the blackest city in America, in the middle of all that political and social upheaval. So, how did you end up in the loving embrace of Aunt Lamell? How did you end up there? I think you have a passage from Black Sheep that you're going to be reading to tell us how you ended up in
yeah.
the
I
warm,
think that can
loving
tell.
embrace of Mama Lamell.
Yeah. So she had had enough. I had just, bounced around. So she had had enough. So they came to get me. And this is the ride from one side of town where to the other side, across that very river in the background, the Anacostia River, which separated the haves and the have-nots in some senses of DC. So here's the ride across town. On that day, my new father, Uncle Calvin, the imposing figure behind the wheel of his 1970 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, became my hero. He's what a father is supposed to be. He always seemed to be in a great mood, and my face lit up every time I caught a whiff of his signature Brut 33 cologne. Warm, caring, just plain decent. I admired that man deeply. I watched his every move, modeling how to act, how to be a solid, strong man. Now, on that ride home from the orphanage, I sat nestled in the back of that Cadillac between 2 girls who had been my cousins, but now they were my sisters. Mama, Lamell sat quietly up in the front in the co-pilot position. She calmly fired up her cigarette and handed her lighter to Linda so she could light hers as well. My new older sisters, the oldest one was a real sister in the blackest sense of the word. Linda was a 20-year-old student at Howard University, college you went to if you wanted to discover what it meant to be black. And if you didn't know, Howard University would certainly teach you what it meant to be black. I'd already liked Linda because during previous visits, she sometimes let me light her cigarette, occasionally take a puff. I would get nervous because she got mad if I ever wet the filter too much with my lips. But Linda always wore her shades, which gave her a mysterious aura, sort of like the male version of Link from Mod Squad. While Linda looked pretty suave driving the Cadillac, he paled in comparison to the coolness of his oldest daughter. Linda, with her huge afro, big shades, was a pioneer during the embryonic stages of what we have come to know as the modern-day strong, independent black woman. Her enormous afro, comparable to that of soul sister number 1, Angela Davis, legitimized her blackness, not just because of its size, but because it was impeccably sculpted and maintained by an authentic, made in Detroit, red, black, and green pick. Of course, it was blazoned with that black power fist. Linda's afro was so big, she had to get in the car feet first so she could turn around and guide her head into the back seat without disturbing the symmetry of her perfect coif. Maybe I imagined it, but I think I even remember Calvin asking her to move her head to the side so he could see out of his rearview mirror. You see, at that time, the size of one's afro shouted to the world the depths of one's pride in being black. See, it echoed the words of James Brown's Black Power anthem. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Of course, Linda smoked Cool brand cigarettes, aptly named for the most popular brand of cigarettes amongst black folks at that time. Before lighting up, she pulled out a mirror and gave her hair a generous blast of Afro Sheen hairspray. I was infatuated with the way it swayed back and forth. Linda began to pack her cigarettes by smacking one end against her hand and pushing hard so all the tobacco towards the filter end. To see a cool black woman open up a new pack of cigarettes was theatrical. I was a captive observer watching Linda as she let the cigarette hang off her bottom lip while she closed the pack. Then she tilted her head back, blew a perfectly round circle of smoke that would have made Pocahontas and all Native Americans proud. I believe Lamell's father was half Choctaw Indian, so that might explain it. Sadly, the first lesson I learned in the car that day was that things could go from good to bad in a New York minute with these black folks. Fascinated by Linda's hair, wondering what it felt like inside that enormous sphere, I reached over and pushed my hand into it. Boy, the way she reacted, you would have thought a meteor had just crashed into us. She abruptly flicked her cigarette out the window, grabbed my hand so tight she nearly cut off the circulation. White boy, if you want to make it home alive, don't you ever, and I mean ever, touch a black woman's fro. Then, of course, she finished picking it back in place, shaping it nicely. That was my ride home. Welcome to the hood.
Ray, the perils and the pitfalls of touching a black woman's hair. So that's how you ended up in Mama Lamell's home, learning some early lessons. So let's get to Lamell Studevent. So she was a black woman from Mississippi, and she grew up obviously during a time of profound discrimination and segregation and mistreatment of black people, especially in the Deep South. Let's talk about Lamell.
You know, you introduced it as, in the book was marketed as the Notebook Meets the Help. Lamell was a fascinating woman. She was a country girl from Crystal Springs, Mississippi, but she was classy, right? And still a bit sassy. When you think about the movie The Help, think about Viola Davis's character. Her name was Adeline. Then there was Octavia Spencer. Now, if you see in the picture there, that's Lamell in the middle. She was classy, and by no means was Lamell Studevent going to be anybody's help. You know, anything she wanted to dress for, she dressed for cabarets. She always dressed like she was going to a Harlem Cotton Club or something. But she was classy, dignified. You would never have known that she grew up in a small shack in Mississippi. And yeah.
She grew up in Crystal Springs, Mississippi.
Yeah, exactly. And with her and I, it started off a little rough because she was a little apprehensive about how in the world can they raise this white child, convince him that he's black in that side of town. And she had been traumatized by the Klan and what had happened to her as a child in Mississippi. But that's where, as you brought out earlier, therein lies the love story. See, because she had been traumatized by white people, but now she was going to see a white person who appears white, even though she had the responsibility she took upon herself and had every opportunity to remind me that I wasn't. How were black people going to treat him? And what was he going to have to deal with? So it was an interesting transition, but she was an amazing, fascinating woman for sure. And funny.
To say the least. And I have to say that, you know, I've read the book from cover to the last page. Love the book. And one of the things that stands out for me was Lamell's sense of humor. She was, you know, in this day and age, she probably could have made a living as a comedian. That's how funny she was. Side splitting funny. So let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about her humor, and we've talked at length about that, and
Mhm.
I know that humor was something that she had to lean into to make light of difficult circumstances and bring a smile and a laugh to people's faces. So let's talk about Lamell and her sense of humor.
I think the first episode I think I got was, I looked different. So when we went to church, I thought I was cute. So I remember somebody asked me, what was my favorite book of the Bible? I said, Deuteronomy. I knew it was Deuteronomy, but I said Deuteronomy because I wanted to sound cute because I was loving that attention. Yeah, Sister Jackson, Sister Washington. Lamell just standing there, oh, he just think he's special. Okay. I'm going to shut all that down. So anyway, she says, she said, what's your favorite book? I said, it's Deuteronomy. Mm-hmm. She said, you ain't cute. She said, you need to be worried about what mama gonna do to me. That's what be your favorite book. And I'm telling you, she cut to it. I remember, and then one time I had to imagine that because I was crazy. She was crazy in her own way, but I was crazy too because she always kept me talking to myself. She said, who are you talking to? Because I was at that time. I don't know if it was my mama's drugs, but I said, I was talking to one of my friends. She said, your friend? I said, yeah, I got two imaginary friends. One's black and one's white. Right? She said, well, you're going to have to get rid of that white one. We got half of you. That's good enough. We don't have no more white folks in this house. But she always encouraged you, I think, to her children to be their best. But she always encouraged me to be your best, but don't ever think you're better than us. See, that was the dynamic she had to wrestle with in the sense that don't think just because you got blue eyes and straight hair that you're better than us, right? But we had an interesting relationship because I used to call it, reverse racism, and I would talk like a slave. She said, because she was quick to always show me my birth certificate. She said, boy, you see right there, you black, you ain't special. Then I sure know that, mama. I know it. I know that. And she just, because I knew if I could get her tickling, but there were some things that I just, and I would sing Negro spirituals around the house, just to ingratiate myself with these black folks, just to try to prove my blackness, and when I wash the dishes, I sing, go tell it on the mountains and all that. Go tell it on, what was that other one? Yeah, it was
But
crazy.
now,
Jesus
one
Christ.
story that really stands out is you had a story about Star Wars characters. Mel
Mm-hmm.
had some comments about that. What were they?
Well, she was prepared because she was sassy, but she could put people in their place politely with a little bit of humor at the same time. So if a white man asked her, and this is a little bit later after Star Wars came out, he said, well, how is that white kid your son? And I said, well, let me ask you a question, sir. If Darth Vader, no, he says, you like Star Wars? Oh, I love Star Wars. Okay. If Darth Vader can be Luke Skywalker's daddy, how come I can't be this boy's mom? Now, the man corrected her and said, no, ma'am, I think you mean to say Darth Vader, not Dark with a K. So he's going to try to patronize the last thing you wanted to do to that woman. She says, no, I meant to say dark because even in Hollywood, they got Darth Vader treated like a black man. He's a deadbeat dad, even in outer space. Because remember, when Darth Vader came back, what did he say? Luke, I'm your daddy. He didn't say that, but he said, I'm your father, but I'm your daddy. So even in outer space, and then King Kong was next. Like, I remember King Kong actually happened before that when we had movie. Now we watch movie, and I said, hey, Mama, can we watch King Kong? King Kong? Boy, we don't watch no King Kong in no black folks' house. I said, well, why not? Boy, let me tell you something. We're not going to sit here for no 2-3 hours and watch no gorilla jump up and down, and a bunch of Negroes on the island go crazy over that white woman. Ain't happening. So I said, now this gives you an idea of the relationship. I said, but a couple weeks ago, um, we watched that Planet of the Apes, and that white man kissed that ape. What was wrong with that? And she started laughing, but that was our relationship. She said, "Oh, well, that's different. That's all. Yeah, it's different. We ain't watching no King Kong, and that's the way it's gonna be." So she, yeah, she was a classic. I think
She was
one
a
of my favorite
pistol.
lines. I'm sorry, what's that?
I said she was a pistol.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of my favorite lines ever was a white man asked her same question, a couple, and so she says, "Sir, let me ask you a question. If a brown cow can eat green grass and give off white milk, right? How come a brown woman can't eat collard greens and give off a white son? I'm just saying. Have a nice day, sir."
Lamell,
So
oh,
yeah,
her her sense of
yeah, she
humor
was
and her sense of timing was just perfect.
yeah,
Perfect.
and she never came for anybody. She didn't. She was the epitome of don't come for me unless I send for you.
Hmm.
And people would come for her because at that time, it's not now. It's not there. Back then, first of all, you didn't have nowhere near the amount of biracial mixed kids as you have, today. It was a different time and space, let alone, a black woman, chastising a white kid. Like, people thought, she was the nanny or something.
Right.
She had to check with some people with that, So they thought
Didn't
she was
didn't
the help.
happen.
No, she reminded them she wasn't the help at all. She was mom. Yeah.
Great,
Hmm.
great. Thank you so much. We are here with Ray Studevent, author of Black Sheep. And Ray, I think you have another passage from your book you want to read about something a little bit more intimate, shall we say?
Yeah. This is a time where I saw a different side of Lamell, and this is early on when I moved into their home. Lamell took me to the toilet and explained the first rule in a house full of women. Boy, put the toilet seat up, and when you pee, and most importantly, put it back down when you finish. I never learned so much bathroom etiquette because folks in the environment I came from made it seem like it was normal to pee whenever and wherever you were standing. So, right on cue, just as Lamell turned to hear Cookie and Linda reinforce her instructions, I started to pee. Mel jumped back. Boy, have you lost your mind? I thought she was upset about the pee splashing everywhere. But she was alarmed that I thought it was acceptable to urinate in her presence. But what happened next was a moment that defined much of my troubled childhood. With a look I had never seen on her face, Lamell paused, stopped yelling, and whispered, maybe to God for all I knew, "Oh my goodness. No wonder this boy can't pee straight. This child hasn't been circumcised." I had no idea what she was talking about. I could barely pronounce the word, let alone know what it meant. But it must have been important because she made me pull up my pants and then she hugged me. Now, because up to that point, hugs had been few and far between in my life, it felt so good to simply be held. I probably thought, well, if peeing on the toilet gets me a hug, then I'll pee all over the kitchen floor if it means getting me some affection. At that moment, that beautiful southern black woman went from being Aunt Lamell to being my mom. Yep.
Great. And I remember that passage from the story. And I don't think maybe some people can really understand what was going on with this relationship, because it's 2022 now, and the dynamics of our society and culture are so different. But here you are, a young white blue-eyed boy in the household of Lamell Studevent, black woman from Mississippi, who had a hatred for white people, blue-eyed people, obviously for the mistreatment that she suffered. But she was able to, transcend that and take you in as one of her own. And I want to, talk a little bit more about that. Um, just the dynamics that were going on, and the characteristics and the things that she had to dig deep into herself to, keep this household going and have this relationship play itself out in her household.
Yeah. Well, she had to stand up. Whether it was to white people who had questions, or doctors, anyone who questioned her, she wasn't concerned with that. She was more concerned with providing a solid foundation, um, and teaching me how to grow up to be a decent man. She always emphasized being decent. And don't bring any shame on the Studevent name. So, firm, but as evident by the circumcision incident, very compassionate, extremely compassionate, but didn't want you to take advantage of it. Is it the delicate balance? I love you, but don't try me.
She loved you with a firm hand. I know a lot of
Mhm.
people can relate to that. But also Lamell was a very religious woman, and I know that church played an important role in her life and the lives of many Black Americans as well. And let's just talk a little bit about her faith.
Yeah, the church was, obviously, we grew up in a Baptist church. It was something that I'd never seen before on the other side of town. You go into a Black church with a choir that you can hear up and down the street. It's an event. But more than that, than the emotional part of it. Uh, well, first of all, we were going to go in clean. I mean, first of all, there was there was a way you dressed going to a Baptist church, and so we went in, and that's where her roots were. I mean, the foundation of who she was, was rooted in the Bible. And she grew up, and they went to church growing up in the South, and she really tried to reinforce to us the principles that are laid out in the Bible. Now, later on, when I went my separate way, she always said that once you put the Bible down, you're asking for trouble. So I had to find that out the hard way, but that's another story. We'll get into later. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray, for being here. We are with Ray Studevent, author of Black Sheep. And Ray, I think you have another passage from this fascinating story for us.
This is when she showed her compassionate side, but she was also a provider, but also a protector, right? And this is an episode where we went to Howard University Hospital, and she had to get me circumcised, but she had no documentation that she was my guardian. Nothing had been processed yet. There was a doctor, I think he was African, and he questioned her. This is that account. Lady, I cannot help you, he said, because you're trying to convince me that this white child is your son. Excuse me, I'm going to lunch. In response to his attempt to rudely dismiss her, Lamell began to unload. First of all, mister, and yeah, I just called you mister, first because you addressed me as a lady. My name is Mrs. Studevent, not lady. Secondly, I will decide if and when I will ever address you as doctor, because so far you ain't earned that with me. Got that, Mr. Negro? Be glad I ain't called you a nigger, but if you don't act right, I'm going to call you that word and a whole lot more. Now listen, whatever your crazy name is that I can't pronounce, that white robe and that accent don't make you white. You ain't special. I don't care if you African, West Indian, Caribbean, Jamaican, nigga, please. Well, whatever. Yeah, I called you a nigga because my blood pressure just went up. Acting like y'all better than us American black folk. You think you're going to come over here on that boat, disrespect me, ignore me on the land that was built on the sliced and whipped backs of my folks? Remember, you're working at Howard, not Harvard. So the white folks got you right up here with us. With who? Yeah, that's right, us Negroes. And this little white Negro with me will be the closest thing to a white patient you will ever see up here. Just because you came over here on a plane and not a slave ship don't mean you ain't one of us. So please don't make me get niggified up in here. See, them little African girls, wherever you from, might be impressed. But remember these words about American black women. We don't care how much you know until we know how much you care. A black Indian or whatever, put that in your peace pipe and smoke it. Mama grabbed my hand and we walked out. Just as we were about to exit the building, the doctor called us back and apologized. Lamell apologized as well and admitted she was under a lot of stress, and it all worked out, circumcision and all. That day forward, after seeing that side of Lamell Studevent, you better believe I learned to pee as straight as an arrow. That was an episode of how she was protective of her children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Lamell was also, she represented, I think, so many women of that time period who really had to keep families together, had to often defend their families, defend themselves, due to all the circumstances that were going on and the realities, the turmoil, the racism, and the segregation. And that's one of the core tenets of this book. How often she had to stand up for you. And
oh yeah, sure.
And I think it's probably hard for people to really come to understand what this dynamic was like. Here she is, this black woman, and you're a white boy, and often they didn't think that you were related, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't have thought it, and if I didn't look like my father, I would have doubted it all.
And how did that play out? Let's say in some other settings, like schools. I know you were going to school. What types of challenges did you have to face because of this dynamic?
Well, I think that the saving grace was really because I grew up and I came out of a black woman's house or a black family's house. Had it been a white family in that neighborhood, it would have been really problematic. But when you grow up, and I was there so young, I'd made friends with a lot of the kids my age. We went to school together. But she, I think, she wasn't going to raise you to be a punk. You had to fight, and once you fought enough, she said you ain't had no more problems. I mean, you're still going to have a lot, but everybody was fighting. I mean, it was just a matter of growing up. That's all that is. But I think for me, I think that was important because people knew my sisters, they knew my cousins, they knew her, so I was just, real light-skinned, Scoop, or as they call me, or Raymond. So that was, but there were episodes, barbershop and things like that would really make things interesting. Getting a haircut.
And that moves our story right along to one of the funniest passages of the book. Why don't you, set it up for us?
Yeah. The barbershop is, it speaks for itself. So I'll just let it go. This is me walking into the barbershop by myself. Outside of the Black Baptist Church and a Black Panther rally, the barbershop was about the blackest place on the planet. But of course, I didn't know that at the time. I walked in. My mama said, give me a haircut. I said, my sister said, be sure to give me a light-skinned soul brother look. The place went silent. Two barbers looked at each other. Shoot, nigga, don't look at me. You know I can't cut that straight stuff. An older gentleman who I figured was the owner approached one of the barbers. Wasn't you in the army? Didn't you cut hair in Vietnam? Man, it was segregated out there. Besides, they sure wouldn't let no brothers cut no white folks' hair. I sat down while they tried to figure this thing out. They flipped through the television channels and found inspiration from the Little Rascals. When Alfalfa appeared with his cow lick, the owner told the barber to copy that haircut. I popped down in the chair and gave the man a $1 bill. He told me it cost $2, and I assured him that I would come back with my mother with the other dollar. As soon as Lamell saw what they had done to my hair, she unleashed the thunder and lightning. And she was already irritated because her hair was wet. Black women have a love-hate relationship with the rain. They love to hate the rain because it messes up their hair. However, despite the pouring rain, Mama dragged me back to the barbershop without realizing I was not under the umbrella for most of the 3-block trek. By the time we got there, I looked like a dripping wet dog, and the only evidence that remained of my horrific cut was that stubborn cow lick sticking out in the back. That day, I was introduced to the blackest side of Ray Studevent. She calmly shook the umbrella, screamed at me for being so wet, and stormed into the barbershop. Who the hell cut my son's hair? Is it true that you were looking at the Little Rascals as a guide, fool? Everyone was bewildered because Mama had just declared that I was her son. Oh, I get this. Y'all Negroes was excited when he said he was coming back with his mama to pay that other dollar. Thought a white girl was coming in here, did. She looked at me. Raymond, one of these niggas messed up your hair. I felt so empowered at the moment, I even dropped the N-bomb. I wiped my hand on my pant leg, pointed my finger at the guy who had cut the hair, who happened to be the owner. It was that big-nosed nigga right there, Mama, him with the glasses. She chuckled for a second before resuming her verbal beatdown. Look, Big Nose, how you gonna cut hair that bad? Fool, you got glasses on. After some customers laughed, she started undressing each one of the barbers, one by one. Oh, what are you laughing at, fat boy? Is this skinny chick your woman? It makes sense. Together y'all look like the number 10. She's the skinny one and you the fat 0. She moved on to the next barber. I know you ain't laughing, Big Lips. I remember you used to come in the library and try to read. You couldn't see the pages because your lips was too big. You don't even need an umbrella out here in this rain. Just pull that bottom lip over your head and you cover your whole body. The fat boy can fit under it too. Even a couple of patrons who thought it was funny mistakenly thought that they were exempt from Mama's onslaughts of insults. She turned and faced a really dark-skinned fellow in his 20s. You too, Charcoal. You can't even get a haircut. You so black they can't even see your hairline. Yeah, I thought I smelled smoke when I walked in here. Burning hair, that was you. His friend laughed, so she went after him. And your buddy. Wow. How can you have nappy eyebrows? Tilt your head back, boy. I bet your nose hairs are nappy as well. By that time, the shop was in an uproar reminiscent of a comedy club. Then the owner interrupted Mama and made the mistake of asking her for the other $1 that I owed. Negro, have you lost your mind? You better give me my money back. The Little Rascals? I mean, your afro looked like buckwheat. So what else would I expect? Where did you learn to cut hair? I was cutting hair in Nam. You were in Nam? Vietnam? No wonder we lose in the war. Come on, Raymond, let's go. As we walked out the door, I pumped my fists in a black power gesture. Right on, brothers, as I said, as I stuck my tongue out at the door who ruined my hair. As I walked out the door, I looked back. Buckwheat. That was Ray Studevent at her best.
Side-splittingly funny. I remember reading that passage and I was just laughing out loud. She was just so funny. and she
Mm-hmm.
was really brilliant at playing the dozens. Want to talk a little bit more about the use of that N word. The book is peppered with
Mm.
that, and it's a conversation that we want to explore a little bit too, because Lamell was adept at her wit. She had a very cutting sense of humor, um, but she also had specific advice for you about that and the use of that word. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the N word was interesting because it served two purposes with her. She was concerned about me using it for safety reasons, obviously, right? But she also used it in referring to me sometimes to remind me that that's what I was, that I was black. So she would drop that N bomb every once in a while when she would be upset if she thought I was, I don't know, using a word and trying to sound white all of a sudden, just trying to, be silly. But it was, yeah, she was really concerned about it. And after we left the barbershop, we had a conversation. And here's how that conversation went. Way to get him, mama. Can you teach me how to talk bad about people like that? Well, Raymond, I sure can, but only if you would promise me something. She stopped, leaned down to my eye level, and for the first and only time I could have ever recalled, she grabbed me softly by the chin. Raymond, listen closely. I know you enjoyed watching me give it to those guys back there, but if you want me to teach you how to talk about folks and their ugly mamas, you have to promise me not to use the word nigger ever again, especially outside the house. It's not a good word, and I need you to keep it off that little sassy tongue of yours. See, people may be offended a bit more when you say it. I was bewildered by what she had said. I responded, well, but everybody uses it, and me and my friends, we call each other nigga all the time. They don't seem to mind. That's because they know your family. Oh, so because they know my whole family like everybody niggas, is that why? She squeezed my chin firmly this time. Raymond Lorenzo Studevent. I'm not going to call you Junior because your daddy don't deserve that. Don't use that word. Ever. And I mean ever. We may refer to ourselves that way sometimes, but never think that you, me, or any black person you ever meet or ever see is a nigger. Unfortunately, that conversation stayed relevant for the rest of my life over the next 50 years.
We are here with Ray Studevent reading from his Pulitzer-nominated book, Black Sheep, and giving us some words of wisdom from Lamell Studevent. Thank you so much, Ray, for being here. So let's talk a little bit more about Lamell and her, who she was. She was a black woman from Mississippi, but she also was a librarian. She was an educated woman, and she
Mm-hmm.
worked in the library system,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
correct? And she was a strong proponent of education, correct?
yeah, yeah. She was she was that she was that librarian that shh, shushing everybody. Be quiet. She'd give you one warning. Then she'd call you outside. But rather than put you out on the second trip, she'd take you outside and ask you, because she wanted you to encourage the young kids in the neighborhood to read, So she said, I tell you what, let me find you something. What do you like? She would ask kids, what do you like to read? What fascinates you? She wanted them head, she wanted those heads in those books. She was a proponent of that. And she didn't mess around with her library. You're making a whole bunch of noise. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
definitely, yeah, I'm sorry.
and
Mhm.
speaking of reading, we have some old clips of
Oh,
some goals from a young Ray Studevant.
yeah.
Age 10, you'll probably read about 51 books. I know so many people are going to see this and they're going to remember Ebony. The Ebony magazine was so popular at that time, still is, and then the Ebony Junior. And how
Mhm.
did you get your submission into Ebony Junior, Ray?
Well, what happened was, unfortunately, a little mischief ended up uh, um, getting me in trouble one summer. I hit a neighbor. We were throwing eggs and apples, and I hit a neighbor in the head with an apple. Now, being as white as I was on a corner house, there was no way I could hide. So he told my mother that the apple hit him in the head. So that summer, I had to go to the library and read and read and read and read. But a funny thing happened. I I started liking it. I was like, wow, these stories. But Lamell got crazy because she was putting books in front of me that were far beyond my years. She did, the Diary of Anne Frank and all this. It's just, she would have me reading books that normally you would read, a few years later. But um, uh, in the library, in just reading, and then somebody heard about. Somehow, I guess they contacted the school. They were asking. I think because Ebony would go around and find out if what was going on in the communities of New York, D.C., or whatever. And that particular summer, '76, I think, is when I read over 150 books. Then that summer, I think I had read 50. My goal was 50 bigger books. 151. They weren't exactly Dr. Seuss, but they weren't. So, and Ebony, I'd heard about this little kid, and read all these books. So they contacted and they interviewed me, and Lamell, of course, was mad at the picture because my hair wasn't combed. I told her the wind was blowing. Come on.
Lamell always had something to say about appearances. That's for sure,
Yep,
right?
for sure. Oh yeah, yeah.
Great, great. Now, I
Mhm.
also want to spend a little bit of time talking about another important figure in your life, and that was Calvin.
Mhm.
Picture of
Yeah.
Calvin. Here he
Oh
is.
yeah.
Let's,
That
let's
was the
tell
man.
us more about Calvin, what he meant to you.
Calvin was a man's man. He was my hero. I mean, Lamell took the baton, but he's the one that got things in motion initially because my father was his nephew, but he was a man's man. He was a 20-year Marine. He was the ultimate provider, protector, and any man that had the courage to raise a white kid in that neighborhood. He wasn't scared of nobody. He was the only person my biological father feared, right? But going back to the library, he drove a bookmobile, which shows you how much they love to encourage kids to read. All right. He drove to the libraries. He drove the big old RV trucks around the city, like RV sized trucks. They were mobile libraries. He would encourage kids to read, and our grades always had to be in order even when I was young. But he was just fun. Loved life. Friday nights, catfish, cornmeal, cut it and gut it, as they say. Sanford and Son, Friday nights. There it was, and he was my hero. I mean, he just was a man's man and had a presence. That Brute 33. You smell that, but you smell the fear in the room. But he was a kind person, kind, and and they both practiced what they talked about as far as the Bible, the principles of the Bible. They were good people, but they also had feeling that you better not mess with us. Yeah.
Words to live by.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, Calvin, passed away fairly early in your life, and left for a while a real hole in your life. And I wonder if you could just share a little bit more about that difficult time.
That was when my hero died. That's when the hero of Lamell Studevent emerged because she was not obligated. He dropped dead in front of us in Mississippi. Lamell's brother, we had just gone a week before to Lamell's brother's funeral. So it was a hot summer day. We all, eating, just having fun, kids being kids, and he walks outside and he drops dead right in front of us. A massive stroke. And the spirit of that house died, because shortly thereafter, Lamell's father died. Just a couple, 2-3 months later, I think it was. So within about 4 months span, she lost her brother, her husband, and her father. And there she was there to make a decision. I can take this boy back to his biological daddy, wherever he's at, if he's not in trouble. I could go to Skid Row, find this boy's mama, give him back. She was not, or give me back to the city. She was not obligated. There was no paperwork signed. She was not obligated to me. So there I was when her husband died, but she placed a challenge before me. So, you're the man of the house now. You want to be like him? You want to make him proud, step up. Like he stepped up for you. But he was an unbelievable man. Just, and sometimes we have revisionist history, but he was just really just an unbelievable. And you could see why he and Lamell just made a great couple. They were made for each other. He was warm, compassionate, but he was strong and solid. He was a Marine. Lamell wasn't gonna marry no chump. They couldn't handle her.
Wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she just run him over.
And Calvin is buried in Arlington Cemetery, correct?
That's right. Arlington, not too far from JFK, the Eternal Flame. Yep, that was the actually very close to the background that we have here, and that was a sad, that 21 gun salute, and that hot day in July. It just, things were never the same in the Studevent household, but Lamell Studevent stepped up. She stepped up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for being here and reading from this fascinating story. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about food. We all know that food plays an important part in our lives, and definitely plays an important role in the lives of Black folks. And food played a particular role in your family's life as well. Let's explore that topic. We all recognize those delicious delicacies.
Yeah. Well, I think I started off on the wrong foot. I think when I first got there, with two things happened. I didn't remember much, but I remember telling Lamell that my white grandmama used to make pumpkin pie. Can you make pumpkin pie? Black folks don't eat no pumpkin pie. Boy, you would have thought I asked her to make me a Klan outfit. She said, "Boy, Black folks don't eat no pumpkin pie. Boy, we eat sweet potato pie up in here. What's wrong with you?" And I thought, And then she made one. It looks like pumpkin pie, just a little bit of that. You can smell that cinnamon, boy. Sweet potato pie is the absolute greatest dessert in the history of mankind. But I think also, I remember right around that N-word time when all of that was going on. I remember Lamell used to tell me, he said, don't try too hard to be Black. You'll insult Black people. They'll think you're trying to recapture some sort of Blackness. Just be you. You're fine. Because I was trying to get in where I could fit in, and she recognized I was trying to imitate too many people. And how do I act? How do you behave in this new environment? Up to that point, I was just scared. I was in a drug environment. And I remember one of the biggest moments for a young boy is to go to the store for the first time, not just a barbershop. So, I remember going to the store and had my list, and on that list, I remember it was sugar and eggs and milk, bread, rice, amongst a few other things. My moment, I'm gonna show these Negroes how Black I am. So I come back. I got brown sugar, wheat bread, chocolate milk, brown eggs. Now they didn't have brown rice, but I compensated and bought a box of Uncle Ben's because they had a black man in the box, right? So I come in, I tell him, look here, we're gonna be black, right? So she got a tickle out of that. I think it was episodes like that because she was even though she had a sense of humor, there was a line of respect that was always going to be in order. So she never really laughed a lot around me too much, but I knew I tickled her because there was a part of me that saw the warm side of her, and it started to bring us closer together after Calvin died. I think we really drew close after he died because Linda, my older sister, had moved on, and eventually my other sister had gone to college moved away. So Lamell and I had really drawn close, and a lot of it obviously was centered around, racial humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also,
but soul food. Yeah.
Picture
And
of
soul
you.
food. She was. I'm sorry. What's that?
I would say we also have a picture of you here with Lamell, middle years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 That was the funny part about that was she used to always tell me to wear colors like peach, turquoise. White people like those colors. You want to. You say you go for a job, always wear white, peach. Don't go in there with no dark black and all that. Nothing. So anyway, she had an opinion about a lot of things, but just a good person. Really good person. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, we've talked and, we've listened to some passages from the book where Lamell had to stand up for you. There are some critical points in your life where you had to stand up for her. And let's hear a passage that discusses that. It involves
Yeah.
food as well.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a dinner with a world that I had discovered that she knew existed, but it was the world of the black elite. Right? And I'm going to read this because we went to dinner and I had been invited, so I'm telling Mama about it. This was one of the most defining moments in our relationship. I teased Mama that some uptown black folks had invited Raymond Studevent the second, not Junior, but the second, of the Carolina Studevants to a posh evening amongst these noble Negroes. We had a good laugh about it until she told me she didn't want to accompany me. Oh, come on, Mama. You always talking about rich white folks ain't never inviting black folks. Yeah, we got some rich black folks inviting us to dinner. Mama finally agreed to go. The evening turned out to be unforgettable and helped me to understand Mama on a much deeper level. We went shopping for something to wear in what promised to be a French-style evening. She bought me a black double-breasted suit by Yves Saint Laurent, which we would just only call YSL. We couldn't even pronounce it, Yves Saint Laurent and whatever. We were horrible. And she treated herself to an elegant black full-length, again, French Christian Dior dress. Mama seemed excited but guarded, and the closer the day came, the quieter she became. While I was painfully jealous of the affluent black class, for this one evening I would be one of the Carolina Studevants, even if I belonged by default. We arrived in class because Mama had just recently bought a new Cadillac Eldorado. I was about to embrace the moment for a few laughs, if nothing else. I introduced myself to the valet. Raymond Studevent II of the Carolinian Studevants, accompanied by my dear Madame Lamell Studevent. We got a chuckle. Of course, Mama, as closer we got to the door, Mama was not amused and seemed uncharacteristically nervous. We entered the foyer, and after introducing Mama to my friend's mother, I left her to mingle while I joined Andrew in his wing of the mansion along with a few of his other wealthy friends. Things took an immediate turn after we sat down for dinner. Since it was a business celebration of some kind, each person introduced themselves. By this time, I had come to realize that an amalgamation meant a merger. Then it came time to introduce myself. Raymond Studevent, a I'm a friend of Andrew. I had been hoping to avoid revealing that I went to Carroll, as it was looked down upon by these folks as a glorified public school. But I had to. Carroll, said Andrew's mother, as she waved her hand slightly. The brilliant reflection of her enormous wedding stone nearly blinded us. I thought you attended Sidwell or St. Albans. Sorry to disappoint you, but I don't. How do you know Andrew? Mom, Andrew said, I know him from St. John's, where he went before. Mama introduced herself next. Lamell Studevent, Raymond's mother. As usual, everyone stared in bewilderment. Lamell, said Andrew's father. That's an unusual name. Where are you from? North Carolina? No, I am not from North Carolina. Lamell, Andrew's mother said. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Lamell? Well, you have a fine son here, and Andrew tells us that Raymond serves soup to the homeless every Sunday. I jumped in, afraid that Mama's blood pressure might spike. Mama always taught me to live by the golden rule. Andrew's mother didn't miss the chance to display her wit through her pearly white teeth. Well, we certainly agree with the words of the good Lord ourselves. As you can see, we have indeed been blessed. However, we Browns have adopted a more contemporary, more Goldman Sachs-ish version of the golden rule, as in the one with the gold rules. Confident in her brilliance, Andrew's mother clasped her freshly manicured hands together and clarified the gap between the uppity Negroes of D.C.'s Gold Coast and us two niggers from the plantation side of town. Now, shall we convene to the refectory? She said. Mama and I had no idea what a refectory was. In fact, I had never seen Mama so withdrawn and overwhelmed by the moment. Could she be ashamed of her Mississippi roots? So, Lamell, a guest said, where did you go to school? Where did you pledge? I suppose you didn't pledge, AKA being a bit brown and all. Nowadays, pink and green kind of allows all shades to pledge. I mean, on both sides of the brown paper bag, Wow. So now, fearing that Mama would let these high yellow Negroes have a piece of her mind, I spoke up for her. See, I was already jealous, but now I was angry. I put my arm around Mama and I proceeded to do what she had done for me so many times. I came to her rescue. I know y'all good Negroes are trying to figure out what this is all about. But let me tell you so y'all can just relax. This woman, this beautiful woman is my mama. She's from a place called Crystal Springs, Mississippi. You see, my real mother's a drug addict. My father, white black man with a complexion rather common in this home. Well, he was an alcoholic and never cared too much for me. However, this woman right here rescued me from an orphanage. Soon after, less than 2 years later, her husband died. She was left with a decision. Take me back to a foster home, an orphanage, try to find one of my parents. But no, she decided that even though I was not her blood nephew, she would still adopt me as her own. You see, this woman standing in your presence is the most amazing woman in this room. And I don't mean that to minimize the certainly impressive accomplishments of any other women here. But I certainly doubt if any of you highfalutin color folks can top that. Hey, Andrew, did I use that word correctly? Highfalutin? Yeah, I think so. Mama smiled. Thank you, son. Now let's go. We got up from the table and left without saying much of anything. I broke the ice on our way home. Mama, now I know why you didn't want to go. I'm sorry these folks look down on you, but you will always be my hero. And I meant every single word that I said back there. Hey, I'm hungry, Lamell. That's a rather strange name, ma'am, Lamell. She giggled. I'm feeling highfalutin myself, she said. Can you pull in that McDonald's drive-thru? I thought of all the deadbeat dads trying to impress their kids with a Big Mac, and I felt so fortunate to have such a beautiful mother. Mama and I grew even closer after that evening.
Thank you so much. We are here with Ray Studevent reading from Black Sheep and peeling away some more of the layers of Mama Lamell. And that passage really stands out for me as well because it was so poignant. And let's explore the whole issue of classism, and light skin and dark skin and some of those issues that Lamell and so many were having to deal with at that time.
Yeah, I was unaware of the black elite class, but it's until I had a chance to go to school on the other side of town, and you had debutante balls and elite clubs, the Jack and Jills, the Lynx, but it wasn't. It was about pedigree. They could trace black wealth back 5, 6 generations. Families like the Syphaxes. I mean, these people were early presidents of Howard University. But it really made me jealous in a way. See, I didn't feel the same when I went to school and started interacting with white kids. You almost felt like they had a head start. But when you're amongst wealthy, articulate, polished black people, and they know in the confidence bordering on arrogance, it was something that I just had a hard time dealing with, and the way they treated Lamell that particular time. Now they all weren't like there were a lot of them that she told me she had come in contact with through the library system or whatever, but the sororities, the AKAs, the Deltas, these were elite sororities. It just depended at that time. There was a time where it depended on the shade of your skin. And it was just, yeah. And I think for me, it wasn't, for Lamell, I don't think the issue was more about complexion. She wasn't dark skin. I think it was more about, for her, was being from Mississippi. I think that bothered her. I think the stereotype of being a Southern black from Mississippi, because a lot of her family was, went to the promised land of Chicago and were rudely welcomed by white people in Chicago. But the way she felt that they were treated as if they were just from the images they saw in the civil rights movement. They would seem to always interview, uneducated black people in some backwoods of Mississippi. And that was not representative of who she was or anybody in her family for that matter. That's what I think bothered her, was more Mississippi than complexion. Even though Calvin was light skinned, and his family, the light skinned ones in her family, and his family, they weren't exactly warm to her. But I think she felt it was more about Mississippi than her being a little, being brown skinned. That's what I believe of her. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, and also, I don't remember if it was around this time, but the series Roots came out, and the issue of Black heritage came into the spotlight. And through our conversations, you mentioned that had a huge impact on your life. And I know Mai Haley also wrote the foreword to your book. And let's talk a little bit more about the impact that Roots had on you at that time.
Yeah, that was, no matter how many black exploitation movies I'd seen and stories I heard in Mississippi, when Roots came out, I remember, because the last episode was the day I turned 10, January 30th, 1977, if I'm almost positive. And it was Chicken George and all of that, but she went up to the school, she talked to the principal, I think she might even talk to my teacher, and she notified people, listen, these kids, this is the ones that may not have known, because there were ones who had come from, different projects around our neighborhood. And She had to protect me there because she worked in the library. She knew about this saga that was coming, and she told, "This is my son. You ain't gonna be no beating up him because you angry about what happens, during this miniseries." So but it was really for me an eye opener because it helped me to really see why she was the way she was growing up in the 30s and 40s through the Jim Crow era. I mean, it was just, so it was easy for me to see. And ironically, right outside, between Crystal Springs and Jackson, it's about a half-hour drive, right between those two cities is a city, Raymond, Mississippi, where actually I think a family friend or someone close to the family, maybe a distant relative, was actually lynched. So you can imagine, of all the names I had, this blue-eyed little rascal had the name Raymond, So the irony of that. But Roots had a profound effect. But having my Haley attached to the book, my agent, she reached out to her. We have the same agent. She talked to her. I mean, because the Haley name is royalty in black literature.
That's right.
And instant credibility. She read the prologue and she just wanted to be on board. Just absolutely wrote an incredible afterword. And that is when I think I really began to pour even more into the book, opening up more, because to have her stamp of approval, meant a lot to me. And I know it would have meant a lot to Lamell for sure. Mm-hmm.
Great. We are here with Ray Studevent reading from Black Sheep, nominated for a Pulitzer. Congratulations on that. Super exciting. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Such a fascinating story. We know so much more about Lamell. She was funny. She had a sharp tongue, but she also had some secrets that were kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, there's some things that one of the reasons why I had been approached, and I know my agent was talking about writing this book for a long time, but while Lamell was alive, you don't put black folks' business out in the street like that. But I know that she had some interesting crushes. She had this crush. We watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and a lot of people like Robert Redford. And I caught Mama. She said, "Boy, that Paul Newman. Oh, that's a good-looking white man." And I said, "What?" And it caught me off guard, But then she even said, "Boy, he even got a black name, Butch." but then it was secret because I would come in. One time we went to see the movie Cannonball Run, and the kids liked it because they had Lamborghinis, fancy cars. But I thought, Mama, what do you know? But you worked in the library, so she was familiar with a lot of the book cover, magazine covers promoting movies. And I said, "Well, that's strange. Why do you want to see?" "Oh, Burt Reynolds. I got it now." She said, "Boy." But I think the funniest one was, Paul Newman was her man. But I used to catch her on, come in the house. She's watching Magnum P.I. And I thought, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I just love Hawaii." "Yeah, I'm sure you love Hawaii." Tom Selleck, that was Hawaii. So she wouldn't be pleased if she found out I put that out in the public because she used to tell, "Boy, don't you tell nobody I like that white man."
Lamell was a woman that had good taste. Let's face it, right?
Yeah. Oh, she loved Walter too, but her man was Walter, the lead singer for the OJs. That was her man. That was her guy right there, boy, Walter. I remember one time they were on Soul Train. They had white suits on, and she told me to bring the groceries in the house. She said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Mom, the OJs on. Everything stopped. Groceries dropped. OJs on Soul Train. They was wearing white suits. I'd never forget it. But Walter from the OJs, that was her guy. She wouldn't mind me telling that."
Great. Lamell, a woman of many surprises. But also, I know that your relationship with her and just your relationship with life, you ran into some challenging times and some difficulties, like so many of us do. Um, and Lamell had to set you straight on more than one occasion. And I know you have a passage that you're going to read that will discuss this issue a little bit more. Why don't you cue that up
Yeah,
for us?
we didn't. Yeah, we're gonna skip. We don't want to give away too much of the book, but we're gonna all the things that we talked about, a lot of the humor, but a lot of those the black and white dynamic, being abandoned, racial issues, and it came to a head at some point. And this passage here was when Lamell and I are in the garage, and I had hit rock bottom. One of my friends had a number of them. This is when D.C. was on the verge of becoming the murder capital of America. But a couple of my friends had been murdered. It was a really difficult time, and I'm going to begin reading. No parents, no race, no future, and a warped feeling of no love. It was time to check out. I drove from visiting my friends at Howard University, drove to Mama's house that evening, pulled my car in the garage. I still had the key in. I decided to die from carbon monoxide poisoning. I left Mama a note. The note simply read, "Mama, I quit, but thanks for everything." The moment of truth had arrived. All I had to do was turn the key and I would never see another sunrise. I leaned back against the headrest and started laughing and crying at the same time. I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. Then I heard someone opening the small side door. It was Mama. She wasn't happy. She signaled for me to get out the car. Back already, huh? So see, I guess your blue eyes and pale skin didn't work for you out there in this world, huh? How long has it been? 3 weeks? I quietly apologized for the things I had said to her during our previous argument. She mistakenly thought that I was asking to come home, and I repeated my apology. She didn't deserve what I said, even though she had hidden the letters from my biological mother. True to form, Mama went in for the kill. So she says, let me get to the point, boy. First of all, before you leave that blue suit, because that's the suit I'm going to bury you in. And in that hard head of yours, get this in that hard head before I start looking for your casket. She was keeping her voice down, afraid that the neighbors might hear her. Young man, look at me. Remember how you screamed when you first came to visit us. Look at your chewed up fingernails if you don't. Remember how you screamed when you heard police sirens. Remember when they scraped the skin off your legs, when that chicken pot pie burned your skin down to the white meat. Everyone heard you screaming from inside of the ambulance. Look at that cut on your lip. Feel the fracture in the back of your head. I held you in my arms to quiet your screams. This nappy-headed country girl from Mississippi did all that. I didn't know what to say other than to remind her that I knew all that already. Then she noticed the holes in the tailpipe. Raymond, are you going to do that to me? To us? After all I've done for you and all the death I've endured? You're going to leave me a lasting memory of killing yourself in my garage. Mama wrapped her arms around me. I cried and just thanked her for stopping all my screams. Mama, you've been amazing to me. She wiped my tears. So this is how you repay me, by having them roll your body out of here under a sheet. I collapsed on the floor. What is it, Raymond? She said. You got this crazy black and white curse, as you call it. And I know your friends being murdered and you didn't go to college. Those uppity rich black folks got you down again. What is it, Raymond? Mama slowly lifted her eyebrows. Boy, I'm going to give you something new to scream about if you don't open that wounded heart and tell me what happened to my little blue-eyed devil. Okay, that's a bad word. How about my little blue-eyed rascal? The boy who wore his Pierre Cardin suit to match my Yves Saint Laurent, even though I couldn't afford either. We dressed up together, matched sharp for church. Where is that Raymond? Where's my son? And that was a defining moment as I grew into adulthood.
We are here with Ray Studevent, reading from Black Sheep. It is out, came out March 2021, nominated for Pulitzer, published by Simon & Schuster. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
You know, Ray, when I read that last passage, it really just hit me in the heart because, having read, the entire book and knowing of the difficulties that your relationship had, and there's so much going on with the story. I encourage people to go out and read the book and learn more about your relationship. But yeah, there she was one more time, still words of wisdom, but also, tough love and letting speaking her mind, letting you know exactly how she felt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Far beyond her years in wisdom, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting to the end of this fantastic conversation. It's been such a delight having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming here and having the courage to share your tale and tell us more about Lamell Studevent, Chocolate City, and growing up with this unique dynamic playing itself out. But we're going to, fast forward a little bit and, talk about how you had to go back in time to help Lamell remember that you were related. And I know a lot of people will be able to understand, people who have elder parents or relatives or friends who are suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. And Lamell, unfortunately, had Alzheimer's, and you went to visit her, and she did not believe that you two were related. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that was the Alzheimer's was one of the reasons why I wrote the book, because I knew she was. My sisters had told me that she was deteriorating and the Alzheimer's was getting worse. But you always think you got time. But going back and then her seeing me and and in that picture there, she had no idea who I was. She knew who I was, but she couldn't place me. You see, and that was 3 days before she passed. And I remember thinking, wow, I was sad because you always say, I was living in California, she was in D.C. You always say, you're going to go back, you're going to go back. But if you have loved ones who start with signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, and you don't want to get to the point where you regret it, because there's nothing sadder than someone you love and you feel like maybe you didn't quite get the closure that you wanted, or you didn't tell them the things you wanted to tell them. So Alzheimer's really made this a difficult situation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And, I remember, at one point when we were talking, discussing the book and the conversation that you mentioned that you had written the book to get closure. And have you been able to get closure for yourself?
Yeah. I think as you see on the front of the book, you see the word redemption. And I think as I wrote in the book that, I wanted the first copy to be placed at her tombstone in Arlington Cemetery, which she's buried right next to Calvin, right on top of him, actually. But in writing this, giving her a voice, I felt like I've gotten closure. And I think she would be proud of the voice I gave her. There's some things she might not appreciate. I don't think she would like that cover picture because we had matching turtlenecks on the cover. She would have rather we had on matching suits, but suit dress. But and that showed the serious side of her. But yeah, I felt like I definitely got closure with that amazing woman.
And she passed in 2018.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Lastly, Ray, if Lamell were listening right now, what would you want her to know about you? What would you say to her?
First thing I would say is you were right, Mom. You were right about everything you said, except I didn't end up dead. But your baby boy took me a little longer than she wanted, but I figured it out. And she would be most proud that I never in 30 years, just like her, I never missed one day of work because I was sick. That woman never called in, and I made it my passion to never call in sick. And I think that would make her most proud. She loved the work, and she thought a man that went to work was just, I'm scared to think if she saw Paul Newman going to work, or but she thought a man going to work every day was just attractive, was just a solid person. So I think that was, Then she taught me the other simple lessons, turn off the lights, all the little subtle things. But I think going to work every day, being a responsible father, I think she would be proud. And I think all those lessons went back to that heart. She was left-handed. That was the hand that kind of got things in order, Yep.
Left-handed Lamell.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here and joining our conversations behind the screen, cool conversations with cool people. The book is fantastic. I love it. Congratulations on the Pulitzer. And my final question is, when you win the award, will you come back?
You better believe it. I will come back for sure. I'll walk there. I'll be so happy. But hopefully we won't be on Zoom. But no, thank you to you and the whole Zoomcatchers team. You guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'm just flattered that you thought enough of Lamell and her story and my role in this to have us on. I really appreciate it. It means so much to me. Thank you so much. It's been a blast, and yeah. Thank you so much.
It's been fantastic. It's been great knowing you. I feel like I know Lamell like a family member, and I know that a lot of people, listening to this show will be able to, it'll resonate as well. And good luck with the rest of 2022. And is there a blacker sheep coming out?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna ride this. I'll ride the wave of this Pulitzer, and I'll ride this out, and then maybe we'll have the black sheep returns. I don't know, but yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And that's a wrap. We'll see you next time. Yeah. They keep telling me, baby.